and I wanted to go to college in the US, and my parents were like, it's pretty stupidly expensive. I was like, yeah, but the vibes are great. I think I was trying to go to college because I was scared. I was scared to fall behind. I'm great at like chatting, and like I'm a very good bullshitter. I can bullshit a lot.
Vedant, thank you for doing this. How are you doing there?
I'm good, man. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So in this video, I want to dissect what is sneaker reselling and how did you start a business and what are you doing in this space, right? Let's start from the starting. What exactly is sneaker reselling?
Basically, there's a certain category of sneakers that release very regularly that are low in quantity and high in demand. I think the operative term here is the high in demand. There's a lot of people who want them and not as many release. And these shoes are then sold in an aftermarket very regularly. So it's become like this whole almost organized culture of resale that operates in like communities across WhatsApp groups, Facebook groups, Instagram pages, stores, platforms, etc. So it's a whole different like industry in the world of limited edition sneakers, basically.
What creates hype in these sneakers? So for example, I bought my first sneaker recently when I went to Dubai. I got my Pandas Air Force, right? But I never understood the hype behind sneakers. So help me understand like what creates value for the reselling market for a sneaker and what doesn't.
Fairly nuanced. It's not just like the quantity, right? Like Pandas and Air Forces, for example, release in an almost infinite quantity. It's very high quantity, but the demand is equally high. Like they became cultural staples. I think there's basically three factors. It's the look of the shoe, the release quantity, and the story. Some permutation combination of these three will usually lead to a proportional performance in the aftermarket. So the shoe is very rare, but doesn't have a great story and is very ugly, it might not do very well. But if a shoe is really nice looking and doesn't have a great story, but has a pretty limited quantity of release, then it might do really well. Sometimes even if it has a very big quantity of release and doesn't have a good story, but looks really nice, can do really well. At the end of the day, these are the shoes to wear, right? Sometimes shoes are decently ugly, but have a great story and are pretty rare, and then they'll do very well in the aftermarket. You know, for example, there's the Ben and Jerry's Dunks. They're called the Chunky Dunkies. They look like a Ben and Jerry's like tub of ice cream. I don't think they're very pretty shoes. They're just very I mean, it's subjective, right? But it's not very mass appeal in terms of looks. But I think the shoe goes for like $1.5 lakh or something like that. And when it came out, it was extremely popular, despite being soggy, because it's very rare and has a great story. And everybody has some sort of connection to Ben and Jerry's, the ice cream, and so on and so forth.
So Vedant, what is Mainstreet and how did you get the idea of starting a company like this?
Mainstreet is essentially just an attempt to build a business in the gap of sneaker culture catching up in India. And I sort of I think I just got lucky. I came across the idea when I first heard of like the world of sneakers. It was like, oh wow, this is so interesting. And I did a bunch of research. When I looked up, it was like I came out of this rabbit hole and it's like there's no sneaker culture built in India yet. And I was like, oh shit, like I think I was just young and dumb and unreasonably confident. I was like,
that was what year?
I was like, we'll build it. I don't know how or why I thought we could build it, but this was 2017. I said, I was like, we'll build sneaker culture in India, despite knowing absolutely nothing. It was like I said, very unreasonable confidence that I had in myself. And then I sort of, being very young, dumb, naive, and having an enormous risk appetite as a result of the privilege my parents gave me, I really just jumped into it. And again, got very lucky. Sneaker culture happened to grow. And because it happened to grow and I happened to be there, we managed to build something of, I think, a decent amount of value that has led to the state of what our business is today. So it's been a series of very fortunate right place, right time events, yeah.
Very interesting. How would you advise someone who wants to spot an opportunity like this? Like, it doesn't have to be sneaker reselling, can be anything else. Like, how can they spot something like this?
I think it starts with looking. You need to be hunting for it. I think I grew up just really obsessed with sort of building a business. So,
were your parents also been into business?
Sort of. My dad's into education. He's an author. He's a corporate finance trainer. He was a CA. My dad's a CA. and he sort of got full time into education because he enjoyed it so much. And he wrote a book, and he's a PhD, and so my father's a very pragmatic man, and he really built his life himself and gave us everything, and everything I have today is a very direct result of everything my parents gave me. My mom's a psychologist. So she's a therapist, and she's spent all her life doing sort of counseling for underprivileged cancer patients. And so I feel like I was very blessed to have the emotional sort of quotient that my mom blessed me with, and the pragmatic approach to life that my dad did. And I think it was the perfect balance of I didn't have to do anything else. I can just faff around and get my way through a lot of things. I never really had to work hard for anything.
Tell me the time when you chose not to go to college. Why did you take that decision?
I didn't really choose. I gave my 12th, and before the results came, I was already working on a few things, and I wanted to go to college in the US, and my parents were like, it's pretty stupidly expensive. I was like, yeah, but the vibes are great.
Which college in particular? Arizona?
No, I was trying to go to Loyola Marymount University in LA.
Never heard of it.
Yeah, I guess.
What do you want to study?
I wanted to study economics. I want to study economics. I think I was trying to go to college because I was scared. I was scared to fall behind. I knew that I was working on a bunch of things that needed focus. And my mom was like, take a gap here. And I said yes. I think she was just trying to psych me into not going to the US and then go to college in India. But I was like, yes. And I was like, okay, I needed this. And there's actually a video of me sort of discovering this on YouTube. And I was like, I know I've been scared to fall behind, but I think this is the right thing to do. So I took the gap year. And then mom was like, you sure you don't want to just apply, go to Symbiosis? I was like, no, I'm doing this now. And the gap year just went well. And then my results came, I failed 12th. My parents were like, you obviously have to go to college. That year was good. I moved to Bombay. I started seeing some potential in myself.
How did you make your first buck with reselling? What is the story behind that?
With reselling? I used to run a vlog on YouTube. I vlogged every day of my life for 700 days. As a hope to stay accountable to the internet so I could start a business. Through the course of that is when I discovered Mainstreet, and I was building Mainstreet. I was doing it very publicly. There's the first 300 days of us starting Mainstreet are on YouTube as a day-by-day record. And in the course of that, someone reached out to me saying, hey, I'm looking for these shoes. No! My ex-co-founder and I applied for a raffle for an easy release in Bombay, and then I took a bus and I came to Bombay, and I went and I stood in line there and I got 2 pairs and I sold them on OLX. I sold one of them on OLX, for 42,000 rupees. He bought it for 25, sold it for 42. I borrowed that 25 grand from my dad.
Crazy.
Previous day, took a bus, came to Bombay, stood in that line, got that pair, was very happy. Sold on OLX a couple of weeks later for 42 grand.
Who bought it? Who buys itne mehenge sneaker?
I mean, I've pretty much built my life off of people like that. But there was some guy that actually ended up being good friends. I still know him.
Right.
There's a lot of consumers. We often find ourselves just seeing the world the way we see it and forgetting that there are people who see it differently. And once you sort of just open your mind to that and okay, I just have to find those people, and then you go and you find them. It's step by step.
Plenty of people in India who would do that.
There's so many people. We built a whole business off it. We've not even scratched the surface. There's so much more depth in this market to extract. And I think this year we'll see a lot of it. It's pretty exciting. I think that top 1% of the top 1% of the country has so much disposable income. And as a business, we're very primed to sort of extract a large portion of that and deliver good value on it. So that's sort of the larger thesis we're operating on.
How would you advise someone who wants to start a business in this domain? How can they get started?
In this domain, like sneakers?
Yeah. What pitfalls do they normally face?
I've actually done an hour-long course on this with an edtech platform that's coming out in a couple of months. So you can check that out once that's out. Where we really theorize the ins and outs of it. But I think core goal is start with one shoe, man. Just do your research, get on the WhatsApp groups, know what you're getting into. And very often, I think the biggest mistake people make is prioritizing profit margin versus return on investment. A return on investment is a unit that is measured by time, not as a percentage of sale. So, people will often buy a shoe for 20 grand and then they want to sell it for 25, but someone's offering them 23 the next day. They're like, no, I'd rather wait a few weeks to sell it for 25. But, if you buy something for 20 today and sell it for, 3,000 rupee profit tomorrow, that's a 15% ROI in 24 hours. Annualized, that's 4,500%. That's 45,000%.
Right.
That's 4,500% annualized. If you can flip your money every day like that, that's a ridiculous ROI. So I think speed, being agile, cutting losses sometimes, 20 today might be 18 tomorrow. That's okay. That's just the game. That's just how, similar to how the stock market works, man. It's just like this is a stock market with a lot more like fundamental analysis driven into like young people because they see it out and about and it's talked about. It's just, it's like shallow. So.
Very interesting. So now that you've raised funds, what does the numbers look like? Like, what is the growth that you're thinking that you can get? What is the potential in this market?
Our growth trajectory has not changed much before or after fundraise. We're using the cash to sort of take the headspace it gives us to build quality. We've not gone and hired. We've actually done some cost cutting post fundraise. We've just taken that opportunity to really look at where we stand and
get this office. Amazing.
Okay, we got this office before. It was done before. The idea of the fundraise is more on giving capital to have headroom to build quality. So now we're building this quality of experience, quality of operation. We're setting precedent for where this business is 10 years from now, 15 years from now. That's how we sort of look at it. For us, it's more about, we want to do the things that we know will carry on for the rest of this company. It's like life cycle. We hope we're trying to build like a large cap public listed company like a few years from now. So we want to make sure that we're set in stone for that. That is what we're preparing for.
How do you counter this feeling of doubt that people have? People message me all the time that, hey, Ishan, I'm trying to start this one new thing, but I'm afraid that I might fail. Or, for example, you don't have the degree right now, right? So how did your parents have that conviction? How did you have that conviction over what you were doing? Was there any moment of time when you felt that, "Arey, agar ye nahi chala to?"
Yeah, like I said, I think I had risk appetite because my parents really gave it to me in the sense that I know if everything fails, so I'll pack my bags, go back to Pune, I live with them again. I'm very lucky to have that. I think everybody doesn't have that, so I'm very grateful. My parents didn't have that conviction. They wanted me to go to college, but they still trusted me, and that's something I'm really grateful for. Is that I was so convinced that I was going to do something of it, and they weren't fully, but they still gave me that space, and they were unreasonably supportive. I think if you don't have that privilege, I don't know if I can comment on it, but I've had my fair share of self-doubt. And I think a good amount of just removing yourself from like the worry of the worst case scenario helps. So just being okay with the worst case scenario. You got really nothing to lose. I'll often do like, what is the worst case scenario? Okay, that's okay. So now you don't have that pressure. You're not building from the fear. You don't want to build from fear of not doing something or fear of something. You want to build from love of doing what you're doing. And that sort of really helped us get through most things. We've had a fair share of failures. I've lost a lot here and there, been slapped enough times, It's just a question of sticking around, man. You just gotta survive. I think survival is the goal.
Your hometown is Pune, but you have moved here in Mumbai and you love Mumbai is what we talked about. Do you think people should move in their early career to Mumbai or to Bangalore or to Delhi? Do you think that that's a positive thing to do?
I think you're the average of the 5 people you spend most time with. And I think cities like this sort of have a gravitational pull of high quality people. So you have the opportunity to bump into the next Shah Rukh Khan, Nikhil Kamath in a city like this.
Right.
You know what I mean? Before they're there. Chances of just meeting high quality people are disproportionately high here. And I'm really big on those things. The people I surround myself with mean a lot to me. So I would definitely recommend it if you can afford it. At the end of the day, each person's, there's no one size fits all for any rules, everybody's got to figure out their own situation. If you can take that risk, if you can afford it, I would highly recommend that. Energy does offer much like larger outcomes.
For you, you've been documenting your whole journey on YouTube, right? Would you recommend, was it the most important thing in your journey of growing Mainstreet?
I stopped vlogging much before we started Mainstreet properly. Vlogging for me was sort of leveraging my insecurity of looking like I'm useless to get myself to work. I am a very distracted person, so working for me has always been very hard. I'm great at chatting and I'm a very good bullshitter. I can bullshit a lot, but when it comes to doing actual work, I'm not very good at it. So I
work as in?
Anything that needs focus, I'm not very good at it.
So what are your strengths?
I realized recently I have some pretty bad ADHD. So now I've just spent some time navigating my brain to help me get more work done and be more at peace with it and feel less shitty about it. I would just feel bad about it, that I'm not capable of this, and that gave me a lot of self-doubt. But I've sort of just been more compassionate with myself lately. and more understanding and accepting of how my brain functions. Okay, this is how I work, and that's okay. I can't work like everybody else, and that's fine. I've just sort of, once you accept that, it's allowed me to do so much more. What are my strengths? I think I'm a good people person. I'm good at dreaming. I'm good at forming a vision. I'm good at being ambitious. I'm good at motivating my team. I think I'm good at just understanding how people think.
Last question: if you would be in the shoes of Ishan Sharma, what question would you ask Vedant?
And I'll probably ask myself why I mumble so much, I guess.
You mumble?
I think I mumble quite a bit. I think I live in my head quite a bit.
Too many thoughts.
Yeah.
A friend of mine told that that's the sign of creativity. Maybe.
I hope, man. I'm pretty bad at most things creative, you know.
Right. Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing your journey and the lessons for sneaker reselling. Guys, if you have any questions, let me know in the comments below. You can also check out Vedant on Twitter. Is that where you're most active?
No, not really. I think I'm Mainstreet.
All right. Thank you so much.
Awesome, man. Have a good one.
Yes.